Hi, welcome to the next part of my training in wedding photography. You might recall that the last time I posted on this YouTube channel and also on my blog, I was speaking about the personal profile of a wedding photographer. Today we're going to talk about some things that are important, part of the how you prepare and what you actually do on the day, the things that you might come across on the day of a wedding that might cause you a little bit of grief if you're not prepared for them. And I've entitled this little segment of the course called Know Your Enemy, Know Your Weapons. And I'll explain as we go. This is all from my, as I've said before, the training course that I developed over the years, which I've taught many people wedding photography. I am a retired wedding photographer now, but I still am open to training new people and helping new people, and that's part of what this channel is all about, and these posts on wedding photography. So, know your enemy, know your weapons. You will find a segment on this, and I'm going to post this video on that on my wedding photography, my photography training channel, which you'll find there, and I'll put a link to that section. This is the section on Know Your Enemy, Know Your Weapons on my blog. So, know your enemy. What is your enemy? Who are your enemies when you are attempting to photograph a wedding? Time. Time is essential, and I'll talk about later on how you really have to work to a timetable, because you can't be caught with not enough time to do what you need to do. The weather, wind, rain, heat, the cold, the glare, the darkness, mud. I've even been caught out by ants at times, and bees, flying insects attacking a bride because she had a white dress and she had to run indoors to get away from them. All these type of things can be part of the enemies that you have to deal with. The flying insects, I noticed, were also being attracted to, I had a white polystyrene foam board which I use for reflecting light when I'm out in the field and indoors as well, and these particular insects that came out on a grassy oval just after a thunderstorm were attracted to white, so they were attracted to the white dress of the bride and also to the white of my reflector board. So we had to run from those attacking insects. Equipment malfunction or inadequacy of your equipment, flat batteries. You've really got to make sure you've got the right gear to photograph your wedding, and lots of backup equipment, and make sure all your batteries are charged the night before. I've alluded to this before in the profile of a wedding photographer. The health and physical fitness are very important issues that you need to be on top of. Wedding photography, if you're doing it correctly, is a very exhausting physical process apart from the mental side of it. Difficult relatives, guests and subjects. You've got to be on your game as to how to deal with those sort of people. I remember once doing a wedding where the mother of the bride, I think, really gave me a mouthful, and I was a bit concerned because I wasn't aware I'd done anything to upset anybody. And I was relieved when the parents of the children of the mother said, "Don't worry, that's just her," and that relieved me quite a bit, and I was able to shoot the rest of the wedding without too many worries, and she did join in later on. Sometimes overzealous amateur photographers, guests and relatives can really be something that can get in the way of you capturing the wedding properly, so you really have to learn how to deal with people like that. Lack of space and difficulties of location available, particularly inside houses. You've got to be able to walk inside someone's house if you're taking photos of the bride or the fellas at the house before the wedding. If you haven't been there before, and that's why quite often I like to quote people in their own homes so that I know what the place looks like before I actually get there on the day. If you haven't been there before, you need to be able to walk into a house, spend about 10 minutes, get there 10 minutes early, walking around, and work out where you're going to take your shots, where you're going to be able to bounce light from ceilings or walls, what sort of shrubs are in the background, where the sun is, where there's going to be some shade. Generally speaking, you've got to know how to think very quickly about where you're going to frame up all your shots. That comes with experience. Unfamiliarity with geography and landmarks when moving between locations. That's a lot easier now that we have GPS, but I remember once I was photographing a wedding interstate in Victoria. We live in South Australia, and I was having to go from one side of Victoria, rural Victoria on one side of Melbourne, to rural Victoria on the other side, and it was a journey of probably about an hour and a half to get from one side to the other, and had no idea where I was the night sorry, the morning of the wedding. The father of the groom, I said to him, look, we don't know how to get there, and he said that's okay, and he got out a street directory and photocopied all the different pages of the street directory, stuck them all together with sticky tape, and then traced with a marker all the way our route that we had to go. Now that was very helpful, but even so we got lost twice on the way there, but still managed to capture the wedding. So it's very important to know how to get to places and how to get there on time. Now the things that I regard as weapons, that's some of the things that I regard as enemies on a wedding day. The things that are your weapons as a wedding photographer: your communication skills, your sensitivity to people, and your sense of humour. I've already alluded to that before, I think, in the profile of a wedding photographer. Your photographic knowledge and experience, your cameras, lenses and modern technology, good reliable portable flash equipment, these are all part of your weaponry. Backup equipment, a complete second set of everything, might seem extravagant, but there will be a time when you need it. A good, sturdy, lightweight tripod. Tubular legs are the most stable. I now use a basic Manfrotto tripod, which I find very good. A quick release tripod head is desirable. Also, if possible, a ball joint head is very useful. A lot of the times these days, of course, you don't really need the tripod because you can bump up your ISO speed and hand hold a lot of shots now in low light. Rechargeable battery packs if you're using separate portable flash guns. I used to use the Metz 45 hammerhead flashes with quantum battery packs that went with them, and I'd charge that up and they would go all day. I could shoot 2 weddings in a row if I wanted to with one of those battery packs. But once again, you need backup battery packs as well. Your knowledge of your technology, I used to say knowledge of your film and its properties, exposure, latitude and all that, but mostly people aren't shooting with film, but if you are, you need to know the characteristics of the film you're shooting with. A planned approach is very desirable. A total equipment check the night before the wedding. Also check before you leave the wedding and arrival home that you haven't left anything behind. I remember shooting a wedding some probably hour and a half away from where I live, and I got halfway home and realised that I had left all the gear, all of my equipment at the reception place. I quickly turned around and drove back, and thankfully everything was just in the corner of the room where I'd left it. No one had even noticed that I'd left it there. Only one person noticed me sheepishly walking in the door and coming back to collect it, but you've got to be really careful, and that's why it's good to have an assistant with you. One of the things I'd say to an assistant is make sure I don't leave anything behind anywhere. Pick up after me if you can, please. It's a very big help. A handheld meter, another one of your weapons. If you have a handheld light meter where you can measure the light falling on the subject, not the reflected light, even though metering, of course, in all our digital SLRs these days is very good. I often used to think that my portable battery pack and my handheld light meter that I had, I had a Minolta light meter, were the two best pieces of kit, apart from the cameras, that I had when photographing weddings, so I could really make sure I got it right. I've alluded to having an assistant. When I photograph a wedding, I very rarely would do that by myself these days. I used to in the early days, but I learnt that you need to have a second photographer with you, someone you might like to be training. It might be your wife, your husband or a friend, to give some help. They can help with some of the things I've mentioned, with navigation, carrying equipment, also security and other things, and also making sure that you don't leave anything behind. And they can also learn and become a very good second shooter, and they will capture things from angles that you can't. And some photographers these days, I've watched some of the photographers on YouTube who say, I really like to be the second shooter these days, so I can do exactly what I want, and I train someone else up to be the main shooter. So they're just a few of the things that you need to think about. What are your enemies on the day of a wedding? What are your weapons? Certainly one of the things to do with the weather, I used to check the 4-day forecast before the day of the wedding and make sure I had a plan B if I knew there were going to be thunderstorms and rain or extreme heat, as we can get in Adelaide from time to time. So thanks for watching today. A little bit more along the progress of what it takes to become a wedding photographer. I'll post some more again soon. Thank you.